G'day, Chris Pickett from V2 Australia.
How are you, Chris?
Good,
I'm
thanks.
Brook.
You're Brook. Brook Henry from V2 Australia. Ding ding, this is round 2 of Pico v Bevel. Okay, the engine's, well, it's not really fighting us and I'm winning at the moment, but we've got Mr. Bevel here, or Mr. Miyagi, you know, wax on, wax off. You are the Mr. Miyagi of Bevel drives, aren't you?
Well, it's, yeah, maybe.
Well, before we go any further on that note, because you're going to impart knowledge, I'm like a sponge, right? I know you call me other things, but I'm like a sponge today.
Deserved it.
I deserve those other things. I probably do at times. But I'd like to go down a rat hole for a second and just say hello to my 3 grandkids, because they're Pop's a bit of a YouTube sensation according to them. We all know that that's not true, but so Madden, Mannix and Ari, love you. Righto.
Well done, Chris.
Yeah, that's right. So last episode, so we're up to episode, this will be episode 5. Last episode, we started the engine, we got all the top end off and cracked the nuts and getting ready to split the cases. So where do we go from here?
So we are going to basically take all the bolts out of the to separate the halves, and we'll take the remainder of the stuff off the crank and the gearbox, the clutch, which is reasonably straightforward. So you've already loosened all these nuts, remember? So basically all that can be, all these the 4 nuts, this one, they can take those off, and let's take the parts off the crank and have a look at them all.
Okay.
And make sure they're okay, and we'll need our trolley to put our bits and pieces on.
Okay.
So maybe our cameraman can find that for us.
Once he gets back on the job.
Yeah.
What was that?
We need our trolley to put our bits on.
Absolutely.
So yeah. So
Lift your game, mate.
he's not filming now, is he?
I think so.
I am, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
You're not like a deer in headlights, are you?
No. I just.
Can you just clean that oil up, please, mate? Look into that, will you? Yeah.
Gonna need another cameraman.
Don't bang your head on the vice. We don't get to knock any sense into yourself. Well, we don't want a dead Frenchman.
No, we don't. Not on our watch.
Alright.
So we'll just have
What?
a quick look at it and put it down there for washing up later.
You're a Kiwi. He's a
Right.
Frenchman. Rainbow Warrior.
Rainbow Warrior.
I have no clue what that is.
You don't know what the Rainbow Warrior was about.
The young generation never ceases to worry me.
They've brainwashed you.
They've
whitewashed
brainwashed
you.
you.
Okay.
Okay, righto. Back to the Bevel. So, you want me to...
The frogmen. The frogmen. They came from the bottom.
That's right. They did too.
They did. You might have to look that up, mate.
I'll look it up for sure.
Righto. Yeah, okay, you want me to...
Yeah, so all the nuts and stuff can come off there.
We cracked those the other day.
Yeah, we cracked them the other day, and we'll just pull all those bits and pieces off and have a quick look. I can see something that we're going to have to replace now.
Oh, can you get a nut for that?
Yeah, I can get a nut for it.
Yeah, well, that clutch
You've got the
basket
nut
looks...
when what you need is a socket.
A socket, sorry, I meant, yeah. To undo the nut.
You need a gun on it.
No, that's all right. It was just... The thread was a little bit... How you going? Yeah, that clutch basket looks...
Yeah, so the clutch basket on this engine is substantially worn. So you can see all the marks in here, which is really common. So and also another problem is that face there. And remember, I was talking about the lock washers, the lock washers that hold the tab washers. Why we don't use them? There's a classic reason why you don't use them, because well, we're going to talk about that later. But basically, they hold the nut from spinning off, but they don't hold the pressure on there, and that this will be loose and working. Yes, the nut don't spin off, but it works, and these get damaged. So we manufacture these. This is soft mild steel, which is what they did back in the day, but we use a hard carbon steel and heat treat them. so they're nice and hard, and they don't do this and they don't do that. So there you go. Keep going, brother. Clutch basket. We'll look at that. I mean, these don't normally give any trouble, and that one looks reasonable, but we'll change the bearings and everything in it as a matter of course. Now that is a bit of a mission, so we'll just spin that around for him to. So this is an early style Ducati electronica ignition, so it's self-generating. This engine will run without a battery. The whole bike will run without any wiring in it other than the stator plate, if it had it in it from new, but we're going to change all that. So this is on a taper. There is a factory tool that goes in these 3 holes that pulls it off. They can even tend to bend the flywheel when you use them, so you've got to be a little bit careful. But if you give this gear a sharp crack with, don't use a steel drift, you can use a copper drift or a brass drift, and what in Australia we call a gimpy, and just you give that a put that on. This is heat treated and very hard, case hardened, so you won't do it any damage. And you just put it on there and give that a sharp crack with the gimpy, and just that's it. Just hold it there, give it a good belt. That'll do, and then there you go. Off.
Whoa.
It's off.
It's off.
So
It's
I
alive.
mean, that one did come off very easily. Just grab that flywheel. I'll just go through a couple of other things. That one did come off very easy, and Chris wasn't expecting it, and neither was I. I thought you might have to give it a couple of hits, but honestly, they do come off very easily if you crack them here. And if they don't come off, crack them again, and just keep going around until it goes. So these in here are that's a counterweight, and those two there are magnets. And what happens? They were never very good to start with, but these are like the magnet on your fridge, like that plasticky material that hold your door closed on your fridge, and they deteriorate over time with the heat and the oil, and the magnetism drops out of them, and so the spark gets very weak, and that can cause all sorts of problems. I used to run these on my race bikes back in the day because they were very simple and no wiring, but as it turned out, our race bikes were running too much compression for this ignition, and it just wasn't enough to. We had grief with it. Okay. Now I did some testing on the dyno with this ignition and a better ignition, and all we did was change the ignition and not the ignition timing, and we went from this system to a Krober, which actually is very similar because this one has no mechanical advance. It has an electronic advance, and it's either in one spot or full advance. There's nothing between. It goes from 10 degrees to 38 degrees in a nanosecond, and when you're riding one of these old girls with one of these ignitions and you're riding along at around about 2800 RPM, you'll feel the engine sort of hiccup and surge, and it'll come smooth, and that's when it changes to from 10 degrees to 28 degrees. So that's a really, really bad thing, just old technology. So there's new ignitions don't do that. And the Krober that we ran on the race bike, massive spark voltage compared to this. This is probably about 16,000. The Krober is like 44,000 volts at the plug. And it also had 2 triggers. One where you set it to start, which was like 10 degrees, and then the other one was at whatever you want to set it at. And again, technology's moved on, but very, very strong spark. And an engine, I think our engine at the time was making probably 80 horsepower, and by putting the Krober system on, and we had it all there to change, from 80 horsepower, it went to like 92 by changing the spark voltage, which is pretty incredible. What that's doing is it's burning the fuel you're putting into it and making it into horsepower. Okay. So with low spark voltage, it's an issue. So it was something that I learned. It was something that I learned a long time ago, and why I've been ditching these ever since, because they just don't have the spark voltage. But on cars like you had a lot to do with, like the big V8s, everyone was talking about sports coils. Remember they were going on sports coils?
Yeah.
That's why they did it.
Yeah.
Because the sports coil had massive spark voltage at the plug. And that's why they were better. Because they took the standard factory one off and put a GT40 or whatever they put on, and it made the car run better because it was burning the fuel better.
Yeah.
Anyway, we digress.
Now,
So-
just on that note there, I just noticed it's obviously been mucked
so
around with in
the
the past.
reason like that is like Chris, because someone has had trouble getting it off.
Yeah.
And they've put screwdrivers, levers, all sorts of stuff in the back there trying to get it off.
Yeah.
And it's not uncommon. And see, you can see how thin this plate, the wall, this wall here is quite thin.
Yeah.
And when the puller goes in there, the factory puller, it's got little legs that go in here and they go around the back of that hole. It's a round shaft turned down on an eccentric, and you put it in, turn it, and it picks up there. But if these are tight,
on a taper
seen them.
especially.
I've seen them bend these plates, and then the thing's trashed anyway.
Okay.
So I mean, I know it looks a bit how you're going dominant with a brass drift, but you're hitting it on a hardened piece,
Yep.
and the composition of the brass or the copper, which is different to steel, affects the way that it comes off. So don't bash it with a steel drift. You want something. That's why this is in my drawer.
Yep.
It's a piece of copper. Brass is actually better, what that does is transmit the shock from the hammer and the bang into the thing and make it separate the taper.
Okay.
I know it sounds like
No.
Fairy stuff, but
mucking around with old front ends on Holdens or whatever. It's very similar.
yeah.
isn't
Well,
it?
it's interesting that a different material will make it's different to get it off. So there you go.
Yeah. So
I
take
think
that
there's a
little
key
key
one
out.
that can come out. So you've got those big. You've got your big while we're on that side. You can get these 4 big 10mm screws out.
Okay.
Which I think I can't remember if we cracked them last time or this time, but anyway, they're ready to go. They're ready to come out.
No,
there you go.
I think I must have cracked
You
them.
cracked them, so there you go. So you can pop them out.
They weren't too bad actually.
No.
The smaller screws when they're damaged with the heads are a bit of an issue, aren't they?
Yeah.
Or can be.
So you can pop them out with that. You've got that. And you've got that and that. There you go. Push that in. And just... There you go. On a normal, we would... I have all these in stock, all plated, ready to go. So these will go away to plating. And we'll have a set and stuff to put into it.
Cool.
So you got those 4 out.
4 out.
That's cool, and that's pretty well it on this side. There should be a washer on the shaft behind the clutch basket,
There is.
which is hardened, and that should be okay as long as the nut hasn't come loose and
No.
I get a screwdriver.
Yeah. 2 little screwdrivers would be nice.
It'll come off. It'll just if you take it off, it'll just save it falling off and going in.
Go.
Take a decent all going in. There you go.
Is that hardened?
That is hardened, but there you go. There's another. There's more evidence of why you don't use lock washers.
Okay.
That is that it's not worn. It's not worn. It's not worn. But the lock washer that came loose that destroyed the back face of the clutch hub is also making this spin, and this is rearing up against the bearing. It's totally fine, but you can see that that's been skidding. That in a normal, if it was fitted and wasn't turning, it would not be doing that, making that mark, because that's in a sandwich and it's tightened up. It's not supposed to turn. It turns with the bearing. It doesn't turn separate to the bearing. So,
Yep. Okay.
right. So we got all that. That's good. You can probably pop that drain screen out because that'll get in the road. That'll get in the road when you, I think.
21, isn't it?
I think so. I don't know why 24 is up here.
It's 22.
But does it fit?
No, it's too big.
Oh, they don't. I don't know where they are because those don't belong there. I don't know whether this might do. This might do. Try that.
LGM again.
The LGMs have been in and taken me 22mm spanners and
You
put
know
24 ones in place.
You know the funny thing is, I used. Now you can't blame me.
I'm not seeing the funny side of this.
No, I used a 21mm
At all.
spanner yesterday, Arvo, and I put it back.
So
up.
you are.
Maybe it's my
problem.
fault. I'm a little green man.
Yeah. Did you get this out? You did.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what sort of oil have they put in this thing?
And you know why I know? I used 21 mil because I pulled that out yesterday in preparation.
Do you know what? I reckon that.
To
I'll
drain
tell you
oil.
an interesting story
Yeah?
just while we're on this, and relative to this bike. I bought this bike off. I bought this bike off a friend of mine. Really, really nice guy, and huge service to Australia. He was a gunner in a tank in Vietnam.
Don't worry, I'm looking at the couple. I'm just coming around to get my coffee.
Yeah, he was a very respected soldier, and he lived actually close down here to me for a long time. And this bike was sitting in his shed for. He stopped riding it. He bought an ST2 when he got back from Vietnam, I think. And
ST2 from Vietnam. Are they making that long
no,
ago?
they when he got back from Vietnam, you clown. When he got back from Vietnam,
And
I don't know
ST
how long after Vietnam, but he bought a new one when it came out.
I was going to say like 30 years
He was
after he got
just
back
trying
from
to trip me
Vietnam. No, I was just thinking,
He
what's your timeline
is
anyway?
3 times the size of you. So when Bolt comes in, I'm going to have to put him on here.
Right.
There you go, Bolt. It's true. Brian's his real name, but he goes by the name of Bulk.
Bolt or bog?
Bulk.
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 As in the Incredible Hulk.
Bulk.
The Incredible Bulk, righto.
His brother Rex.
I know Rex.
Rex is the guy that we did his sport engine.
Yeah.
So
And he's the fireworks man.
He's the fireworks man.
Yeah.
That's right. So it's all adding up, you see. So he had this bike stored, and he did a lot of miles on it. And he said it was he didn't know what to do with it, and I ended up buying it off him. And I was going to use it as a mule to put my Retorno engine in, and have it as a test bike. And that may still happen, I don't know. But then you came up with the 860 project, so I said, look, we're going to use Rex's bike. But I didn't I haven't said that, and I probably should, for Rex's sake. And
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, you'd like to see it finished to a high level.
both Rex and Brian are good friends, and they've been in Ducatis a long, long time, and Bolt will very much like to see this bike back on the road, as his brother will, and yeah, it'll be we'll get him down here one day when we get a bit closer.
Well, you can say bulk, like and subscribe, and you'll see your bike back on the road.
Yep, that's it. And we'll, like I said, we'll get him down and he can have a look at it, and we'll see what he reckons.
Sounds
Right. So back to the other side, I think. We can go mad on there. So you're going to take the sprocket nut should just come off. That should be. We should have already loosened that.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
And so that can come off. And I'll just have my English breakfast tea. It's about time you made me another one.
Problem is, all that. Oh, yeah, here it comes. Problem is, when we make you cups of tea, and we do regularly, you get sidetracked, and
they're always cold.
they're always
I
cold.
get sidetracked?
Yeah, funnily enough, yeah. And then they're always cold.
I had to teach a Frenchman how to make a cup of tea yesterday. Only yesterday.
How do they make tea in France?
Obviously not.
They don't.
Do they?
Nope. Hardly any.
So you're a coffee country.
Yeah.
But he knows now. He knows now how to do it.
Well, I must say, when I was in France, I never had a cup of tea.
Yeah.
I only had coffee. There you go.
Had a cup of wine.
You can take this out, and so this is the crossover shaft that Ducati came up with to change the gear change from one side of the bike to the other. It's flawed. Don't work real flash, but it did work. It was done for the American market, and in actual fact, if the gear changes out of the selector box, it's a much more positive change. This causes a lot of gearbox problems, which is probably good for V2, but not so good for the bike. So
We haven't decided whether we're going to.
Well,
that'll go right in.
we're building this bike with the option of having it on either side.
Okay.
Because you can't make your mind up.
Yeah. I don't mind riding gear change.
No.
But I used to be indecisive, and now I'm not real sure.
No, well, I've noticed that. Right, get this out, please.
That's loose already.
Yeah. Oh, well, I can have it. So this has got like a horseshoe plate that fits into a groove. It's crude, but it works fine. So it retains it. You can show that goes in there, and then so that will pull out.
Cool.
This will pull out. Yeah, and that little horseshoe plate fits in there where the slot is. There goes in there, and the bolt goes in there and holds it. So that holds it, and then it can't. That's it. Holds its position, and it'll rotate, but it won't move left and right.
And there's a bush
There's
in either
bushes,
end.
there's a bush in here,
Yeah.
and there is a bush in the cover. Not in this end, but in the cover. So we may or may not use that. I don't know. So you've got the sprocket, you've got all that. Okay,
Yep.
so you can take. We've checked the bevel. We've checked the mesh on these bevels.
Yeah.
And like they're not crazy bad. So we'll be able to reset those up.
Yep.
So you're going to take these screws here out. I think they're still tight, Chris. I don't think we.
You didn't undo those.
I don't think we cracked them, so they can. Yeah, they're going to be tight, but you'll get them. Just give them a good dong. They will be tight. There you go. So that is the lower bevel support plate, which is this what Chris is taking out now is the major difference in between a round case and a square case engine. The round case has a totally different system to this, and they came up with this system for several reasons. The main reason being that on a 750, on a round case engine, the bevel gear that goes on the crankshaft drives these two. So it's got one on the crankshaft, which you'll see this doesn't. It's different. It's a straight cut gear on the crankshaft, whereas they had a bevel gear. They've got a bevel gear, and if the main bearing comes loose or fails or gives a problem, which they do, if they're not assembled properly or whatever, so just
pull that off.
Yeah, no, we'll get a screwdriver in there and pull those out. But this situation with the bevel gear being on the end of the crank versus a straight cut gear, if the main bearing comes loose, it will destroy the bevel gear, and that is a very big issue with round case engines, and it happens all the time. And we've had to make those gears, and we've got to make more at the moment. This engine, the crank can fall out of it, literally. The main bearings can fly to bits and the crank's flopping around, and it won't do any damage to the bevel gears because it's connected with a straight cut gear, and the straight cut gear will tolerate a bit of movement, whereas a bevel gear, especially what they call a spiral bevel, which is what a round case is, those spiral bevel gears they have to be exactly how they are set up with their little grind marks so everything is perfect. They can't move in and out, and they can't move up and down, otherwise they'll just rip all the teeth off, and that's what happens. So this was a huge step forward for these bevel drive engines, made them a lot more reliable, and if they did get a loose crank, you didn't have to spend thousands of dollars changing all the bevel gears. So I'll just get a couple of screwdrivers there. You could pull this plate off here, and that will come off there. But what I like to do is try and pull the gears out with the. There you go. It's gone.
Okay.
So it's gone. See the gears are coming out.
Yep.
With the. There you go. The gears are coming out. Hold the gears onto the plate. There you go. That's what I'm trying not to do, but that's okay. So let's just have a look here. Yeah, that's all right. Come out. You can take that out. We mustn't mix this one and that hole and this one. So these are the shims. These are the shims on here. These are the shims on here that we change to change the mesh of the bevel. That's a spiral bevel, and you see it's got straight cut teeth. And these are made in two pieces. So this comes off here. You never take them off. You don't need to. But this here, these shims here, shim that bevel gear, which is a spiral bevel.
Onto here.
Oh, well, yeah, I'll get my head around there and show you. So when that comes out, when it's in this situation, we'll be changing all the bearings in here anyway as a matter of course, but when you're taking it apart like this, you certainly do not want to mix, because this one is matched to that one and that one is matched to that one, which we'll go through when we do the rebuild, but you just need to make sure that all stays together. So, and it's what we do is we wire this to that plate so that it can't drop off.
Okay.
So you can put it under the bench and keep it up that way, but we must got to be careful with that don't fall off, and firstly the shims get mixed up, but more important, the
bevel,
front
the
and
gears.
rear pair of bevels must not be mixed up
Okay.
in any way. I
Don't
can
you-
actually get them right, but it's not easy.
Take that
So
off?
yeah, this is basically forms part of the spacer on the crank, and that is the actual bearing that comes with the bearing when you change it. So that's the bearing
Oh, I can
race.
say it's
That's the bearing race out of that bearing, which
It's
you
like
get.
it's like a keg.
Yeah, it is.
Is that
like a keg.
worn or is it supposed
No,
to be?
it's supposed to be like that.
Right.
It's so that when it slides in the roller,
I'll put that back in the centre of
that
that.
can go in the middle. Yep, that just is the roller bearing. And then it has another spacer on here. That's another spacer on here. And now we're going to get to the. That's just a spacer that spaces the bearing in the right position.
Okay.
This is the gear I'm talking about here. This straight cut gear here.
Mm-hmm.
This gear is driving those two straight cut gears on there.
Okay.
And then that drives the bevel. So if this bearing in the back here fails, yes, this will get loose and flop around. But number one, it's got a bearing here in this plate
Yep.
to support it, which the round case doesn't have.
Yep.
It has it has one out in the alternator cover, but it's a bit average. Yeah, it's a long way away from the bevel. And it has the bevel straight on here, running straight up through here, which is why this has got a filter. Normally, the round case has got a bevel gear and a distributor up here. So, totally different setup. So, we're going to take, before we pull this off, which
Yep.
we'll just slide off, we're going to, remember I said you want to try and crack the nuts when they're still connected. This is still connected, that's the oil pump drive.
Right.
So, we've got a little baby coal chisel there to
Yep.
bend the lock tab back, which is there. So you're going to bend that lock tab back and spin that nut off, which is the nut to hold the gear on the oil pump. And it's gone. There you go.
There'll be a 13.
Yeah, I bought a T-bar here. You normally get them with a T-bar. So if you just put that on there and sort of turn it this way and then crack it back the other way
righto.
quick, and it should go. Okay?
No,
Oh,
no. I understand the.
try that. It'll go. It'll go.
You got him?
Yeah, I think so. Dude, you have to bang it. Okay. No, we'll put it. We'll
She tight.
We'll use a rattle gun on it. It'll be
Okay.
fine. So just stick that on there. Where's that rattle gun you have with the? This one. There you go. Stick that on. It could be Loctite or something like that.
Yeah.
So just bang it with that. It'll come off easy. Well, very hard, wasn't it? Okay, so now we've got that nut off. We'll deal with getting the sprocket off. That's on a taper, and they can actually break those gears when you take them off. They so can get so tight. Right, that comes off. Whip that out. Keyway, rip it out. Keyway there. That goes in there. All the timing marks are all there, which we'll go through later. And we're going to pull that. We're going to pull that oil pump gear off now.
Okay.
We have to take the oil pump gear off because to get the other screw,
Yep.
it's behind the oil pump gear.
Okay.
Okay. So this puller, it's been chopped and cut and modified for. But there's plenty of pullers on the market from car shops and stuff that will. This is not a particularly good puller, but just get a little that little 6-inch adjustable, and I'll do these bolts here up to give it a bit more support. So we'll put that on there. We used this on your car, didn't
We did.
So it's also a General Motors tool.
A factory tool.
Oh, that's right. Made in Australia.
You got a fair pizzle on that day too, didn't it?
It did. Yeah, that was tight. Okay, so I think anything that'll fit that.
What size is that?
Get that in, get the metric adjustable.
Metric
The
adjustable.
metric adjustable, and it'll fit an imperial nut.
Okay.
So this is actually quite a good puller because it rests up against the crankcase, see?
Ah, yeah.
And you can
okay,
get a
right.
bit of a swing on it.
Okay.
So they are tight, like so.
Yeah, that's tight.
See, it's got a lot of load on it. But I mean, considering it's a tiny little taper, so Mr. Gimpy again. That wasn't very hard, was it?
No.
So there
Okay.
you go.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's a tiny taper, but they do get tight. You can hang that back up now.
Where'd you get that from?
Where those above the shock driver.
The where?
Don't worry
Oh,
about that there. Okay, so you're back on. You can rip those two.
I'm back on.
You can take those two cap screws out that hold the oil pump in.
Okay.
You get it? They'll be tight. We do have this. To help you. If you don't get it.
No, that one was okay.
Here we go. So you can get the missing parts wherever they are.
Oh, here we go. There's a
Well, if you grab the spindle, it'll just come out. Yeah, that's
okay.
one that
The woodruff key.
will go missing. So that should if you hold the spindle, and it should just come out. We'll get it with that.
There we go.
Going beautiful. Okay, so we're gonna disassemble that in this video, but we'll do that in a minute.
Okay.
Well, we can do it now. No, we'll do it in a minute. We're gonna just take the back off, and I'll show people the. So it's got a pressure relief valve
Okay.
that you just dropped into the bottom of the crankcase
Yep.
because you weren't watching.
No, I wasn't watching. No.
So that's the little ball, which there's the seat for it on there.
Yep.
That's the seat for it, and there's a spring in it.
Yep.
So you need to pull the spring out, and you drop it in there. Oh man, that's the. I think actually Noah had one of those like that on his auxiliary engine.
Did he?
I think so.
Okay.
It's not exactly high technology. So we're good in there. That's all out. These blocks are going to come out. We might do that at another time because there's quite a bit involved in explaining all that.
Okay.
And that won't stop us. That won't stop us splitting the cases.
Okay.
And that pipe is pissing me off.
Yep.
So I'm going to deal with that.
Did you cut that straight?
Oh, did I? I don't know.
There's a special tool for that. Don't worry, that's an in-go.
It's good that you remember these.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I heard that you're a slow learner, but obviously it's not the case. Right, so we're going to pop it out of this jig
Okay.
and we're going to bang it into another jig. Have you got all the screws out around the bottom?
No,
Well, you
haven't
probably
done
need
it
to
yet.
do that.
Yeah, I was waiting to be.
You've dropped the ball there.
I was waiting to be learned, taught.
Yeah. That can be a long process, but anyway, I'll get a block of wood and we'll hold that up for you.
Waiting for you to impart your knowledge.
Right, so just slide that block under there, and you'll be able to see that, and we'll put that on there to catch this oil that's going everywhere. You know, when I picked this bike up off Brian or Bulk, he said to me, when we turned the bike off and stored it, we pulled the spark plugs out and we filled the whole engine from the spark plugs up with oil, and we filled all this up. And I don't know what oil that he's put in there, but when we get him down there, we'll have to ask him. Because man, I reckon he got the oil tin and the maple syrup or golden syrup mixed up. Because man, that is unbelievable. Look at it. It's like treacle.
Like treacle, yeah. Very thick.
I'm glad I didn't try and start it. Although he did say you have to give it an oil change before you start it.
He said, oh yeah, it's all good, remember?
He said it was perfect. No, he said it should be right. He said it was going good when he stopped it.
They always say that, though. It was going good when I was parked.
He's a respectable man, my
Oh,
friend.
no, that's right. He's probably 100% right.
And I told you, you just need to be careful because when you see the size of him, and he knows how to shoot a gun.
Does he?
He does.
I mean, let's face it,
It's
something this age.
the oil is new. It's definitely brand new. It's never run on this oil, but man, it must be. I don't know what it's all. I think it's gearbox oil. I think it's that thick 90 gearbox oil.
Something this age has just had a life, isn't it?
Well, I'm thinking. I mean, he wasn't riding this bike when I moved down here, so that's over 20 years ago. So it's been in storage at his place for
Long time.
I don't know, maybe not 30 years, but getting close, I reckon. Right, so you got all those out?
Let me
You
just
can-
check. There's not one here. No,
No,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
You
7.
can whisk that block of wood out.
Yeah. You don't need this anymore?
No, not at the moment. No, go away.
So we need to,
This is a pretty classic issue, which we'll look at. Oh my goodness, I've just seen something there that's. I possibly did that for him back in the day. It looks like a Brook Henry thing. When people used to strip some train, which seemed to be a common thing, I often made a bronze insert, the same as I did on that I showed you on that Norton, and Loctite it in. But often when you unscrewed the drain screen, this used to come out.
oh, okay.
So the thread on this side is okay, but it's got Loctite in it,
Yeah.
and it's bigger than standard. So if you tried to screw a drain screen in there, it wouldn't go in.
Right.
So when we get it apart, we may think of a better way to do it. I mean, I couldn't get the helicoils back then. I'm talking over 30 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
So I couldn't get the helicals.
So the thread in the case is damaged.
Yeah, so if they stripped the thread in the cases, I'd bore the cases and tap it to that size.
You can imagine they be cross-threading it as it's going in.
Mate, horror show. So I used to make these inserts. I'd screw cut them the right size for the grain screen, screw cut the outside to suit the new thread in the crankcases, and put it in, Loctite it in. And I mean, it worked. It worked well. It's just sometimes the insert screws out, and then you got to re-Loctite it in. Which, if you didn't know, you could be in big trouble.
Oh, what's that cup of tea?
Well,
Is it
you're
still
going to
hot?
make a new one soon anyway. So.
I'm tipping this up.
Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to tip this up, and we're going to slip that jig off. We're going to slip this jig off. It'll sit on its studs. It'll sit on the front studs there, like that. And you can deal with that. Perfect. And that can go away on the thing. And we'll just give this a bit of a tug here. You can just get that. Yeah, is there enough in there?
Yeah.
And then,
Where's you want that?
oh, I need that white. I need the little white stand to. Well, it was white when it was new. When I made it, probably 40 years ago.
40 years ago.
Let's just put it on the side first. Like that. and it's going to go on this side because we're going to split it. We're going to take this half off.
Okay, so it needs to come
And
over.
this jig, if you ever, we can make some drawings of that and send them out to people, or we can make them in kit set form or whatever. But that sits on those two mounts,
Okay,
and here,
right.
and this leg. These legs are longer, because that's there. So that's going to sit on there like that.
Okay,
And if it was the other way, it wouldn't. So that'll make it sit flat. Because this is in here. So
okay.
put this here, put it there, and just put it over there. And hang on,
You're right.
You're right. There you go. That goes on there. That goes over there, and that will drop on there. And that's it. There you go. Now those bits falling out
Yep.
are all the push rod tubes, which would have been the first thing I'd do is push the. I put a shaft down there, a bit of welding wire, and push the crush tubes out. I push all the tubes there. We still had one in there.
Ooh.
And I tried to stab you. I don't know.
You
I
did.
missed. I got you, did I?
You did.
Good.
As I like to say, this is a place that OH&S forgot.
OH&S is high on the list.
It's like
It's
we're in,
called common sense.
it's like we're in
Use your brain.
Siberia or
It's called
something.
common
Like
sense. Use your brain.
that. Oh,
So
is that what it is?
if you get hurt, you get dismissed because you're obviously not on the ball.
V2.
Yeah.
The land that time forgot.
Yeah, yeah. So, those, we'll talk about that again later. When a lot of this stuff we're going to talk about when we put it together. But I mean, that push rod for the clutch is in a whole heap of bits and pieces,
Yep.
which they did deliberately, and there's reasons for it, but probably a bit over the top, and it gives a lot of grief. It's not unreliable, but it's complicated if someone takes it to bits and he's looking at it all on the ground and going, what the hell is all that and where does that go? You know, so
Okay.
chances are they're going to put it in wrong. So, we're going to split it. I made sometimes they come apart really easily, but when you're shimming on reassembly, when you're shimming it, often you need to take it apart, put it back together, try a shim, check it, and it can be tedious and take ages. So I made a tool that goes on here, and it does all the. In fact, it does all of the engines. It does all the late model. It does all late model 4-valve engines and whatever. So it is somewhere here. Here it is. So it's another very old one of my first tools I made a long time ago. So it's got all these different holes in it, which fit all different types of engines, and these screws here are basically, I put those in there so that they didn't get lost, and they are what you use to. So basically, it's a jack to jack it apart. So
Okay.
this one here goes in the lay shaft, which is tapped, and that allows this screw here, to push onto the end of the screw and jack that out. And then it's got these ones here. These ones here have got little pads welded on them, so they push on the end of the shaft. I've never made this tool to sell it, but we probably will. I think we probably will. I think it's a valuable thing to have, even if you only use it once. We could make a cheaper version of it to do a particular engine. I only put 3 screws in it, so this on this engine that only needs 3 screws. So one in there, and one in here. So we're obviously going to have to do a few different scenarios of pulling these apart, because there's round case, then there's this one, which is what we refer to as an 860 or an electronica ignition, which we talked about before. So all the electronica ignition ones are this format, and then there's the Bosch engine, and then there's the Millet engine. So there's basically 4 Bevels as such, Bevel twins, and they're all very similar, but just slightly little different things. Our cameraman Tongi noticed, he asked me about this one doesn't have the detent in the back of the crankcase,
Yep.
which it doesn't. The Bosch does, and on assembly, if you're assembling one, you'd need to know all about that. But this one don't matter because it's don't have it. And the only thing that we got to watch with this is the kickstart mechanism. If you just jack this apart or try and knock it apart or at home lever it apart or whatever, unless you know what's going on with the kickstart, you'll do damage big time to the kickstart shaft, probably the cases, and you'll spend an awful lot of time and a lot of swear words trying to get it apart. But if you understand how it works, it doesn't make any difference to the time pulling it apart. All you got to do is load the kickstart so that it gets on the other side of a little plate that's in there. But if you don't do that, it's on the wrong side of the plate and you're trying to pull this plate against the pawl of the kickstart.
Okay.
And you'll break it. And you won't get the cases apart. Well, if you get the cases apart, you can only do it by breaking it. So we're not going to do that. We're going to show you how you don't do it. So these literally will jack the engine apart. This one will push the lay shaft out of its bearing, and so 1, 2, 3 shafts are going to get jacked out.
So I need
away we go. So you just need the Allen key to wind onto there, which I thought we had, but we don't. There we go.
Yeah.
So that's just, you want going to wind them down equally.
Okay.
And it should start breaking the cases. So there you go. I don't know if your camera can see, but see the gap in here? It's already starting to go. And we're going to jack it evenly. That'll go. I'm just checking that Chris has got all the screws out. That'll look bad. No, that's good. They're all out. So you've done good.
Okay.
See, just watch it, because if you look here, you've got like a couple of mil gap. And you've got no gap here. That means you need to put more pressure on that and just make it crack and go. There we go. It'll probably be this one. It's going. It's going. It must be glued or something. Okay, so at this point, it's ready to load the shaft. Now look, what has to happen is that shaft needs to be turned. The kickstart shaft needs to be turned probably 25 degrees to unload it, and it's not normally very tight.
That's what's stopping that now.
That's what's probably stopping it, I'm thinking. Okay. So just we'll back that off a bit.
Righto.
And you can turn it. You can put the kickstart lever on it, which I don't even know where it is for this bike at the moment. You can do it with a pair of pliers, you can do it with your multi-grips, you can do it with whatever you want. I use a pair of vice grips on most of them, but you want to make sure that you use a decent pair, and I put a rag on it. You won't hurt this. Well, it doesn't matter on this one. We'll show you later, but the spline is absolutely
stuffed. Yeah.
Bloody, what we say in New Zealand is kamati.
Is that like F-U-C-K-E-D?
That is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, kamati. She's kamati, bro. So we're going to put that on there, and you can turn that, and it is definitely locked up, that's for sure. So we'll just give it a bit of a time. It should go. There she goes. There you go. There you go. See, and now this is free, and see that's actually coming back. It's actually letting the crankcase. It's forcing the case up. So now it's on the other side of the plate.
Okay.
It's pushing it up. So when we get it apart, you'll see. So keep going. Keep going with that one, because that is. If you don't keep going with that one, what happens is that the lay shaft stays in this bearing, and the lay shaft will stay in this half, and all the rest will stay on the bottom. When you get it apart, it just goes blush, and there's shims and shafts and gears and shit everywhere. Whereas this, doing it this way, when you lift this off, you can actually unbolt this off here. Take the jig off, because that'll make it easier to work with. And when you lift that crankcase off after using this, it'll all just be sitting there, just exactly how it was running. Worst case is some shims that are on the shafts will be stuck on the bearings in here. You lift it. We'll lift this off. We'll look at it, and we'll put those shims back on here if any have stayed in there.
Okay.
All right. And these things that I'm telling you are just how I do it. You don't have to do it that way. There's no book to tell you about that.
Oh, well, but
That's how I do it because it's how I do it.
it's the objective of the exercise, though, isn't it, really?
And you can then looking at what's been going on before you pull it apart is a huge.
In all seriousness, though, how many bevels do you reckon you've built over the years? Hundreds. Hundreds and hundreds.
Literally hundreds.
So,
Hundreds.
so I should be able to just pull this case.
It's probably thousands,
Thousands.
I reckon.
Do I pull this case off now?
You can pull that. You can just jiggle around and pull it up. There you go, and just stand it up. Here, it'll stand on its back legs here, and just have a look. So there's a few things that have happened here that. So we're looking for any shims that have been stuck in here. So I can see one already.
On the main bearing? Two. That's not the main bearing, sorry, yeah, that's on the
low shaft.
The low shaft.
Which is here.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
Yep. So
That's where the main
low
bearing
shaft.
goes. So put that back on there.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think I spied one on the end of the kickstart shaft, which you haven't noticed yet, but it's there, trust me.
That one right there.
There you go.
Yep.
That goes on the kickstart shaft.
There. Right there.
Yeah.
That's the pull you were talking about.
Well, yep, we'll show that. So this is here's the little plate in here. Here's the plate.
Yep.
That little plate there.
Can you see
And
that?
Can you see that plate? We're going to take that plate out,
All right.
and I'll be able to put it over here, and we'll be able to show people what it does and how it works. But that plate is what you call the striker plate, and if you bring the little camera machine around here, so that thing there is what is going behind that plate. So this is spring loaded like that. That's spring loaded. So when it's the gear without the plate and without that, this is actually engaged. So these teeth are engaged. When the bike's riding along the road, it's like that. The kickstart is disengaged, obviously. So when it's riding along the road, it's like that. Those teeth are apart, and that. See, can you see the ramp on there? See that ramp there?
Yep.
That ramps behind this little ramp here. When you push the kickstart down, it comes out of here, and it comes out from behind this little plate, and this goes clunk and engages the kickstart, and then you kick it, and then when you let the kickstart go, it comes back, and you hear it going. You hear it ratcheting back, click, 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 and that's that on there, and then this little ramps onto there again, and it comes up and parks itself there. And when it parks itself there, that plate is now behind. Now that plate is behind here, and it holds that up. So if you try and pull the crankcase and this plate out when it's behind there, obviously it can't come past there. So what it does, and someone has done it to this bike, and the kickstart shaft is totally destroyed. And who knows who did it, but I mean, I definitely, well, I don't know. I know I haven't split it. I don't remember splitting it, but it's been split by someone who didn't understand the kickstart thing. And this is a classic case. If you take that washer off that you just put on, if you get the camera and have a look at the end of that shaft, at this, that is a horror show.
Oh yeah, look at that.
That is exactly what happens when you do what I'm talking about. Someone has done it, and they've chipped all these little teeth off the shaft, which we recondition them. So they've all been. So that shaft has had all the. It's supposed to have a circlip in there, and someone has put a spring washer in there and squeezed it up with a pair of pliers, which I haven't. You know, one of the guys here, Craig, he says, you know, I've been here 14 or so years, and he said, every time you pull a motor apart, you always say, I have never seen that in 44 years. And he's right. And I have never seen that in 44 years, ever. I've seen some pretty shonky shit with these things, but I've never seen someone put a spring washer in there on a damaged spline, because to do that you would have to grind the groove of the circlip out wider to put that in there. When we put it back together, we'll put this beside it and we'll put the right one beside it, and that is pretty impressive. That almost needs to go in the Hall of Shame. It's not bad. And again, never ever have I seen that before. And I've seen some pretty crazy stuff, but no good. Anyway, it's all fixed. That's the great thing about metal.
What did I do with that?
It's a great thing about metal and engines, and it don't matter what anyone does, it's fixable, 100%. Not like working with a human. You know, you can always fix it, and it's always common sense, and it's always just really quite simple. Don't matter what, doesn't matter what they do, you can fix it, which we're going to do. So another thing that has happened to this engine is that the main bearing is not supposed to be sitting up there, and when Chris pulled the case up, it's pulled the main bearing up off the crankshaft, which that in itself has to happen, because normally this bearing, the main bearing, would stay in the crankcase, so it would normally slide off here.
Okay.
But these engines have one of the Achilles heels, is that they have what they call a main bearing sleeve in the crankcases, and there it is there. That's it there. And that's steel. That is steel, steel insert, and I manufacture those.
That's worn too, isn't it?
And it's worn too. It's more than worn too. It's absolutely
Rooted.
had the torpedo. And
What is it? Kamati. Is that it?
Yeah, it's Kamati.
Kamati.
It's Kamati. So what's happened is the main bearing never had the right interference in the crankcase, and the main bearing didn't have the right interference in the sleeve, which we're going to go through. That's quite a... And I mean, I've done a huge amount of experimenting back in the day with the amount of interference in these sleeves, and it is written in the manuals, but it is totally wrong, because, I mean, I don't know, technology changes, or the guy that wrote it didn't get it right, and if you put it together the way the factory give you the dimensions, and it will fail, 100% it will fail. And if you look at the data of the coefficient expansion rates and aluminium and steel and the bearing itself and all that, the data is wrong. And it's not my opinion, and this is something that I'm going to drive pretty hard. Some of the things that I'm going to show and say are definitely my opinion, but 90% of it is engineering and scientific fact, and that problem there is fact, why it does it, and it's not anyone's opinion. The dimensions are wrong when they put it together, and it's going to fail, and they all do. There's not too. I don't think I ever pull one apart that is done more than 20,000 kilometres, and the main bearings are still okay. Or not the main bearing. I shouldn't say the main bearing. The main bearing sleeve. And I mean, this engine is what is it? 75 or something?
Yeah. So it's what?
I mean,
50 years old.
I mean,
is that right?
Looking at that main bearing,
Yeah, 50 years old.
I'm thinking that it's probably the original main. I'm saying that because of the design of the cage and the shape of the cage. This is Loctite.
That's going to say it's been Loctited in.
That's been Loctited in. So, yeah. And I mean, look, I have Loctited them in without any doubt. I mean, I have, because I've needed to for whatever reason. I don't prefer to, and I don't do it. I wouldn't do it if someone was wanting to build an engine that's going to stay together forever, and they're going to use the bike. But bloody hell, there you go. There's the second thing that I've just noticed that I have never, ever, ever seen on one of these engines, ever. And that is even more amazing.
Oh. That's what you're talking about?
That's what I'm talking about. So that is a flaw in the forging. That's a flaw in the forging, and it's actually cracked the crankshaft wheel up through here. that bit has flown off, and we'll get a hammer and give this a belt with a punch or something later, and see if we can chop some more off. But honestly, I have never ever seen a forged crankshaft, a forged crankshaft that come out of one of these things that has actually cracked here through bad forging, and that is what that is. That's just bad forging. It just hasn't been donged long enough in the forge, or it wasn't hot enough, or, I mean, the reason you forge something is exactly that reason. You don't get that happening. But that hadn't been done properly. So the metal hasn't been all... It's like, forging is like almost folding a pizza dough.
Like a samurai sword.
Like, yeah, and it's all, they mix it all up, and then they put it in and they bash it with a red hot with either a hammer or a mechanical press and a punch, and they shape it, and it's not machined, or the forging itself, the shape of it isn't machined. It's banged into shape with a hammer or a mechanical hammer. And when this was done, they screwed up, and it had a bit sticking out the side, and they've just hammered it back in, and it's not one bit. It's got a floor line. It's a floor in the. It's like a rock with a floor, or a bit of metal with a floor, and if that happened up here, this wouldn't have done them. The crank would have flown to bits.
Okay.
And I mean, I don't know. Maybe they looked at it and oh yeah, well, it's down the bottom of the crank. It doesn't matter. I don't know. They might have. They may have not seen it, but I think that if you ground that in a grinder, you would have seen it. Mm. And they probably thought, nah, it'll be right. Don't worry about it. And in actual fact, in their defence, it probably, from a mechanical point of view, and whether it's going to fly to bits or not, they're right. It probably wouldn't matter. But what does matter is what exactly happened. This little bit has flown off, and it's gone into the engine somewhere, and mate, that going through the gears would have blown the thing to bits, and it probably did. It'd be very unlikely that it would sit in the sump, and the motor's been split anyway, so that little bit will be well and truly gone from this engine now, but it could have, I'd almost guarantee it would have caused a catastrophic problem. That going through these teeth would just blow the gearbox to bits. Anyway, we'll deal with all that later, but there you go.
So
I think, do you want to leave the rest of it for the next episode? Is that what you want to do? I think that's probably good. There's still, I know we're going into a lot of things, but I think it's important, and that's what the whole thing's about. And you know, I do have a lot of experience as an engineering person, and that's why I notice all these things that the average person who is just a mechanic wouldn't notice. And I'm not saying the mechanic doesn't know what he's doing. He's not trained in it. I'm trained in it, and I'm interested in these engines. Become my life, really. And so I notice things like that and that the instant I take them apart. So yeah, till next time we find some more things. Thank you.
So like and subscribe, please, and we'll see you next time.